In the annals of Japanese criminal history, few names resonate as deeply as Yoshi Shiratori, a man whose incredible will to survive led him to achieve not just one, but 4 successful prison escapes. While all his escapes were remarkable, one particular escape, in 1942 from Aomori Prison, stands out as a testament to human determination and ingenuity. This is the story of how Yoshi Shiratori became an enduring legend of true crime. The backstory. Yoshi Shiratori was born in 1907 in Aomori Prefecture, Japan. He lived an ordinary life until circumstances led him down a dark path. After losing his job during Japan's economic hardships in the 1930s, Shiratori turned to petty theft. But a robbery went wrong, and he was falsely accused of murder, a crime he insisted he didn't commit. In 1936, Shiratori was sentenced to life imprisonment, and his days of freedom came to an end, or so the authorities thought. Life in Aomori Prison. Shiratori's time in Aomori Prison was grueling. In the early 20th century, Japanese prisons were notorious for their brutal conditions. Food was scarce, beatings were frequent, and the cells were designed to crush even the faintest glimmer of hope. But Shiratori was no ordinary prisoner. He quickly earned a reputation as a troublemaker, a man unwilling to accept his fate. Guards watched him closely, yet Shiratori was always planning his next move, the escape plan. By 1942, Shiratori was determined to escape. Aomori Prison was considered one of the most secure facilities in Japan, with reinforced walls, iron bars, and vigilant guards. But Shiratori's escape wasn't a feat of brute force. It was an act of calculated cunning. Over several weeks, Shiratori began studying his cell meticulously. He noticed that the iron bars in his cell were beginning to rust. The damp conditions of Aomori's cold climate worked in his favor. Every night, using a metal spoon he had secretly stolen from the prison kitchen, Shiratori scraped at the rust, slowly loosening the bars. He worked quietly and methodically, timing his actions to coincide with the guards' patrol schedule. He even managed to conceal the damage by covering the bars with a mixture of dirt and soot. Finally, the night of the escape arrived. Under the cover of darkness, Shiratori bent the weakened bars just enough to squeeze his wiry frame through. Then, barefoot and dressed only in his thin prison uniform, he climbed over the tall prison walls and disappeared into the wilderness. Life on the run. After his escape, Shiratori fled into the dense forests surrounding Aomori. For months, he lived off the land, eating wild plants, berries, and small animals. He avoided human contact, knowing that every person he encountered could turn him in. But life on the run was harsh. As winter approached, the freezing temperatures became unbearable. Shiratori realized he couldn't survive in the wild much longer. In a desperate move, he turned himself in, but not to the police. He entered a local police officer's house uninvited, admitted who he was, and begged for shelter. The officer, moved by his honesty and suffering, decided not to arrest him immediately. Instead, he offered Shiratori food and warmth for the night. But this moment of humanity was fleeting. The officer eventually reported him, and Shiratori was captured again. This time, he was sent to Akita Prison, a facility with even stricter security measures. Escape number 2. Shiratori's second escape came just a year later, in 1943. Akita prison guards believed they had learned from their mistakes and placed him in a special cell with unbreakable bars and a solid metal door. But Shiratori found another weakness: the ceiling. Using the metal latch of a wooden bath bucket, he slowly chipped away at the wooden ceiling boards. Night after night, he worked tirelessly, making minimal noise and hiding the evidence of his work. Eventually, Shiratori created a hole large enough to crawl through. One stormy night, he slipped out of the ceiling, climbed over the prison roof, and disappeared into the storm. The final capture, Shiratori's escapes, made him a folk hero in Japan, but his freedom was always short-lived. After his second escape, he was captured again and sentenced to death for his repeated escapes and alleged crimes. This time, he was sent to Abashiri Prison, the most secure prison in Japan, located on the frigid northern island of Hokkaido. But even Abashiri Prison couldn't hold him. Shiratori managed to escape again in 1944, using the most improbable method. He dislocated his shoulder to slip out of his restraints. The end of the legend. Shiratori's fourth and final S